Yes, our next guest is one of the few alder people who are not running for mayor of St. Louis. Kara Spencer, representing the 20th Ward, which is the Cherokee area, right?
It is.
And you've been alderman for how long?
Just going on 2 years.
Yeah, and we should also mention that. How did you get here?
I took a car.
Oh, you took a car. Not. I thought you only moped everywhere.
No, I moped around, but it's kind of cold out there today.
Okay, but you have a car.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you just never use it except for.
It's cold.
Once in a while. All right, good.
Actually, I don't put my son on the back of the moped when I take him to school.
I hope he has a car seat for the moped. All right, Kara Spencer, St. Louis Board of Aldermen, representing the 20th Ward. We'll get to some of these Missouri Senate bills in a second, but the Board of Aldermen has been in the news the last couple of days with the MLS Stadium and the Metrolink and the Scott trade funding. Where do you stand on all this stuff?
And all this stuff, well, it's a lot of stuff. It gets to be a little bit complicated, because we don't see a lot of the proposals. The MLS stadium, the MLS project is one that, frankly, we haven't seen the funding proposal at this point. So,
no, you're supposed to vote on it on Friday.
Well, we voted yesterday to put it on the ballot, and
not the ballot for the voters, the ballot so you guys can vote on it.
No, we voted yesterday whether or not we'll put it on the ballot for voters to vote on that use tax being used to fund the stadium.
Okay, right.
Our president called a special session.
Okay, and so now, are you how did you vote on that?
Well, I did end up voting on the no side. I think that developing that part of North downtown is a good thing. Soccer is a good thing. I played soccer all through high school. I'm a big fan of the sport. I'm a big fan of sports in a general sense as an economic activity in the city. But at the end of the day, we have to be responsible with our money. And right now, St. Louis City continues to downgrade their credit ratings. We're struggling to pay for basic city services. I've been waiting 9 months to get a traffic study reported back to me to address one-way streets in the ward, which are a major problem. And we are not addressing major city services. And without a regional plan, it becomes a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
And at least you're consistent. You voted against the Rams proposal.
I
right?
did. I did.
And which didn't go to the voters. This you voted against the voters deciding. So at least you're somewhat consistent in that, because there are people who voted for the Rams but against this.
Yeah, look, I'm not consistently against sports, and I'm not consistently against providing economic incentives. But what I am consistently against is proposals that are bad for city taxpayers. And, I just, without having seen the financials, I couldn't even really weigh in on whether or not this was a good or bad deal. We got some generalizations, but they ran this thing down our throats at the very last minute, just like they've done a lot of the other proposals, and I just think that's bad business.
All right, where are you on the Metrolink?
Metrolink, I think, I have been a big supporter of the Metrolink for a long time, even doing some grassroots efforts back, 4 years ago. I represent an area that would stand to gain tremendously if the Metrolink, the north-south line, were built as it were proposed. But I have some reservations with the sales tax. It's one that doesn't get us to the end zone. It gets us partially there. We'll still have to figure out a funding mechanism to pay for operating it, which will be about the same amount of money that this sales tax will generate for the Metrolink. It's a very significant cost. St. Louis has really fallen behind the ball on public transit. You might have seen recently that Chicago was awarded a big $1.1 billion goodbye grant from President Obama because they've been really working on public transit. They've been prioritizing it, and we've just fallen woefully behind the ball here in the city of St. Louis. It needs to be a bigger priority than it is.
So are you voting to put that on the ballot to go to the voters?
I did vote for that. That went before us again yesterday in the special session.
Okay, and so you're going to then support that, you're going to tell people you're supporting that to vote yes for that?
Yeah,
because it's one thing to say, I'll let the voters decide. It's another thing to say, I'll let the voters decide, but I'm against it.
I'm not against it. I like I mentioned before, I do have reservations. This is, the sales tax for Metrolink was decided on, as far as I know, sometime in the last month. This is not a project that we've been working on, and this is not a funding mechanism for that project that we've been working on for a long time. It's something that I know very little about the way in which they plan to do it. Their numbers are very thin. you have to remember that the Board of Aldermen doesn't have the staffing to come up with these big proposals.
Right.
These are big proposals that are handed down from the mayor's office and other interested parties that have the staffing
That have done the research and say, here are the numbers, vote yes or no on it.
Exactly, and they often come to us with very scarce details. They're not something that I'm a numbers person, as you probably know,
Right.
and I get very uncomfortable when there aren't numbers to back up what we're trying to do.
Last one is the Scott Trade Center. Where are you on that?
Yeah, that went before committee yesterday. Again, I have to admit, folks that were running that proposal did invite me out, unfortunately, several times. So they have reached out, unlike a lot of these other proposals and these other projects. Unfortunately, my schedules haven't allowed it, but that's one. We own the Scott Trade building.
Right.
Certainly we can't let it just. It needs upgrades. But again, it's going to come down to the numbers, and so I haven't seen them. I mean, frankly.
Right.
So.
But as an alderman, you have to sort of, and you can argue any way you want, right? It's a representative government. We elect you. You then do our business while we're busy living our lives, and then every once in a while we vote on things, whether not just a constitutional amendment, but a proposition or stadium funding or whatever else. So it's difficult for you, I guess, is the question, not a statement. But you might be against it, but where did you come down on not allowing the residents to vote on whether or not they want this stadium? You say it's bad funding. Why not say, let the voters vote on it. I'll tell them this is bad funding. I'll make my argument and let the voters ultimately decide for the stadium.
Oh, you mean the soccer stadium?
Yeah, the soccer stadium.
Oh, well, I think it's disingenuous to put a bad proposal before the voters. I think that the way in which, we're coming down to the absolute wire. I mean, the application by the part of MLS is due today.
Right.
And we don't even have a funding package okayed by the Board of Aldermen. It's a very in my opinion, it's an irresponsible way of pushing forward a major project like this. And so for that reason, I mean, I would just say, I'm not a big supporter of it. We need to have a more rigorous discussion around these, a more rigorous plan, and a more regional approach to these major projects.
Kara Spencer with us, St. Louis Board of Aldermen. All right, let's get to some of these Missouri Senate. Now, you called me and said, are you following this Senate Bill 5 and Senate Bill 190? And I said to you, no. And I said, why don't you come on the show and tell us all about it? You clearly have some issues with these bills.
Well, I sure do. So in addition to serving the city as an alderman, I also serve Missouri Consumers as the executive director of the Consumers Council of Missouri. We're an advocacy group working on behalf of consumer issues, and as such, we watch what's going through our state legislature right now. As you mentioned, Senate Bill 190 and Senate Bill 5 are some really worrisome bills. Senate Bill 5, to start us out, is a huge bill that will affect every one of our utility bills across the state of Missouri. This is a huge omnibus piece of legislation that stands to raise utility costs for the regular consumers hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 10 years.
I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars.
I don't either. Well,
hopefully they spread it out amongst us all.
They do. Unless you're Doe Run, we've carved out a huge exception for one of the biggest businesses, the largest lead producer in the Western Hemisphere. We decided what we'll do is we'll carve out a big exception for this big electric user and put the cost of electrical grid upgrades on regular consumers like you and I, small businesses, and medium-sized manufacturers who have to bear the costs of those upgrades given the large exemption for the economic development rider for Doe Run. It's crazy.
Now,
it's really crazy.
They did this recently with that Noranda, right? They gave them a special deal, and
they did.
Noranda got the deal, but still went out of business.
Exactly, and let's look at what's going on with Doe Run. I mean, they employ a lot of Missourians. They're very important to our economy. However, they've been laying off people, and it's yet to be seen what will really happen with them. And we certainly shouldn't be giving an enormous discount on the backs of residential consumers like you and I, and small business owners, and carving that out for the biggest user in the state.
It's interesting in that you don't want to pick winners and losers. You don't want to put one business over another. But in essence, they really want to give Doe Run a break on their electricity because it's probably one of their biggest expenditures,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
It's expensive to have a lead smelter plant and you use a lot of electricity.
Sure.
And so to cut them a deal and then we'll end up paying for the energy spread amongst us all.
Hey, listen, big users of electricity already get a lower rate. It's part of the deal. When you buy in bulk, you get a discounted rate. That's built into how we regulate utilities as it is.
Right.
But to further that with such a big exemption is just ludicrous. I mean, to make the rest of us pay for it is just insane.
It's kind of like giving a big company a tax break and then having the rest of us pick up the taxes.
Yeah, because every year here in St. Louis, Ameren, every couple years, Ameren comes before the Public Service Commission and asks for a rate increase. Now, those rate increases are based on upgrades they need to do and other things. And the Public Service Commission comes back and awards them, with significant increases. In fact, we've seen almost a 50% increase in the last 10 years in our Ameren rates here in Missouri.
Go ahead.
And what will happen is if we carve out this exception for the biggest user, those upgrades will be the cost of which will be bared by the rest of us.
Has Greitens commented on this?
To my knowledge, he hasn't, but we're reaching out to his office.
Does it look like this is going to pass?
It's a good question. It's being heard. It was heard in Senate committee on Wednesday. We're anticipating it being heard again tomorrow. We're reaching out to residents, folks who pay their electric bill, to call your senator and tell them that you don't want to pay any more. I mean, this would result in a double-digit increase over the next 10 years on your electric bill, on top of what they're asking at the Public Service Commission.
All right. Now, what's Senate Bill 190?
That was Senate Bill 190. Senate Bill 5 is a huge attack on Missouri Consumer Protection Law. Missouri Consumer Protection Law is known as the Merchandising Practice Law. It's been in place since 1967. It's a broad protection law that allows regular consumers like you and I to take action when we've been wronged by unscrupulous businesses. So, for example, you've been screwed over by a title lender, payday loan, whatever. You can sue that business. What Senate Bill 5 does is it strips away the right and under state law for regular consumers like you and I to take action against an unscrupulous business is if it's quote unquote regulated by the state. And we know, for example, that there some of the businesses that would apply to payday loans, title lenders, banks.
Well, everything's regulated by the state.
Well, a lot of things are. You're right. And what this new bill says is we're going to exempt anything that's quote unquote regulated by the state from being sued by the regular consumer. And that's a real problem because, as you know, payday loans are not really regulated very well. And we're not in an environment in which the government takes harsh action against those very predatory businesses.
Oh, who is this? You keep mentioning payday loans. Is this a sweetheart bill for the payday loan company, or is it for somebody else? Who's pushing this?
It's a tough thing. In the Senate right now, they're looking at a lot of what they're calling tort reform. This is under that umbrella, making business better or easier, in the state of Missouri, making it easier, for businesses to flourish. But this is the wrong way to do it. Removing consumer protections is the wrong way to drive economic activity in the state, because what it will do is really give an unfair advantage to unscrupulous businesses and allow those businesses to just flourish in an environment that will really do a disservice to those honest businesses that are trying to work by the books.
So the business says, I can try and scam this out of whoever because there's no repercussion if I get caught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where's Greitens and everybody else down there on
That's
this?
a good question. As a consumer advocate, consumer advocacy isn't as in the forefront of people's minds. Right now, we have so many there are attacks on so many issues. But when we start to eliminate the people's right to take the action into their own hands when they're the ones who've been wronged, we really, really have a problem.
Kara Spencer, St. Louis Board of Aldermen, representing the 20th Ward, which is the Cherokee area. And the Cherokee area is filled with that area's coming back a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. It's always been there. And, we're a very diverse part of the city. We've got a very strong, thriving Hispanic business district.
Right.
We have a significant amount of Black-owned businesses, and we have a diversity of restaurants and everything else under the sun.
Is Jasper Jardina's Fruit Baskets and Radio Hall of Fame still there?
Step through that one more time. So,
Jasper's Radio Hall of Fame
Yeah.
and fruit basket business.
well, there still are the remnants of that laying around.
All right. Because that was a great place to
Yeah.
go to get a fruit basket and a radio.
Yeah, well, they're not selling fruit baskets anymore, but
All right. And then how's my mini Donald Trump down there? Will, how's Will doing down there? Will, who's my guy down there?
oh, you're
Will.
I haven't talked to him in a while, but I think he's doing well.
All right. Yeah.
I haven't thought of him as a mini Donald Trump, but
he's a bit of a developer, right?
He's a developer.
He's developing. He's has some houses down there that he's fixing up the
he
neighborhood.
he hasn't built any walls, to my knowledge, but maybe
only in the apartments he's built the walls. And then Cherokee Street's filled with all sorts of great antique shops and restaurants and bars and cafes and all that stuff.
Yeah, everything under the sun. We just opened up a new tea shop yesterday, Teatopia.
Yeah.
Which looks like it's going to be a great success. It's one of the smallest storefronts in the city, if not the smallest.
Really? How
yeah.
small?
I can put my hands on either side of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Kara Spencer, St. Louis Board of Aldermen, you're always welcome here. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Drive safe in your car and make sure you wear a helmet on your moped.
Will do.
9:25.